Om Vang me manasi pratisthita mano me vachi pratishthitam aviravirma edi vedasyam ani stha shrutam me ma prahasihi anena dhitena horatran samdadhami ritam vadishyami satyam vadishyami tanmamavatu tadvaktaramavatu avatu mam avatu vaktaram avatu vaktaram. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So the whole course is about the Rig Veda, the vision of unity. Why this title was chosen, there was an idea that we will start with the last hymn of the Rig Veda and see how this unity was implied. Few things I have to say before we start with the course. You have seen the order of what I want to present. We may also change that because we are free, we are friends, so I don't need to follow strictly my plan because I already did this not once and not twice. So the whole material is prepared and it is easy to follow. But in case we want to change and deviate into something which is more interesting for us, we will do this. Yeah, it's fine. So about this unity, the Vedic vision was built on the assumption or on the experience of unity. Unity was already, or so to say, freedom was already achieved by the Vedic rishis. They were not looking for freedom, mukti. Yeah? Mukti is not the word which you can find in the Rig Veda. There is no mukti in the Rig Veda. There is no concept of mukti. There is nobody to be mukta, to be liberated. It's not about liberation altogether. It's about transformation of nature. So these liberated spirits, so to say, rishis, as Mother says, involutionary beings, or avatars who came down, brought this higher knowledge, they wanted to apply it and to transform our nature. They were more interested in the diversity than in unity. So unity they already had. So unity is presupposed or understood, but the diversity was looked for. They were looking for diversity and were very interested to see how this spirit or this presence of the divine can be embodied in all the facets of our life, in all the movements, activities, actions, and so on. So it is constantly a transformative movement, which they call yajna, sacrifice. Sacrifice was to bring that higher consciousness into this lower, unregenerated, darkened being and widen its scope and create more capacity in this being to to make it more subtle and more responsive to the higher force. So that process was quite difficult for many, especially human beings of that time. So they had to, as Sri Aurobindo says, because of the failure of Vedic rishis, they had to split into two parts. One part went into the West, yeah, Chaldean tradition, which was constantly focused on the work with nature and powers of nature, and the other focused itself, the Vedic tradition, post-Vedic tradition, on the spirit itself, and became gradually an Advaitic teaching. So nature became the illusion, and the spirit became the truth. Yeah, Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, in the words of Shankaracharya. And in the West, it became just the opposite. So they focused more on the managing of the forces of nature, and slowly the spirit was, how to say, veiled or faded away from the point. So it developed into alchemy, and finally to the science, and the science dominated the world. Materialism, everything what we have in the West is that separate focus on nature, and this separate focus on the spirit. Separate these two, which were one in the Veda, got separated. So, and we can see it in the sign of Sri Aurobindo, that both traditions are put together. Mother created for Sri Aurobindo this sign, as you know. She took it from Theon. Theon had that idea to bring that pre-Chaldean, pre-Vedic tradition back. So, and Sri Aurobindo embodies this, yeah, in full sense. And by the way, Mother joins him. Mother, who comes from the Western tradition, from the Chaldean occultistic tradition, she joins him, and they build a new integral yoga. So we're kind of rebuilding the Vedic vision. And in that sense, all the explanations in the Veda are meaningful from the point of view of integral yoga only. Any other explanation, whatever I found, Shankara, Ramanuja, you name it, yeah, anyone. Even the closest, this Dayananda Saraswati, whom Sri Aurobindo valued, whose interpretation he valued so much. I even bought his books in Hindi explaining, but his explanations are, so to say, throughout the Vedic texts are the same, that this is one divine, and all the gods are different aspects and functions of the divine. And so this divine is acting, and that's it. It ends there. It doesn't go anywhere else. It doesn't show us the knowledge. It doesn't show us the way to transformation. Yeah? It stops at that level of the metaphysical explanation. So Dayananda is the closest to Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. The rest is absolutely far away from it. Nobody has a clue. If you take Sayanacharya with all his explanations and his institution, which was in the 14th century, where they were actually trying to make sense of the Rig Veda and other Vedas, you will find the explanations which are contradictory, and in the same hymn, he will be translating the same term in so many ways. Yeah, the Sri Aurobindo gives examples. Ritam, for example, the dynamic truth, is translated as sacrifice, as food, as water, and whatever, you name it. So, because he cannot manage the understanding of what the Rig Veda is about, truly speaking. So to get this sense, we need Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. We need integral yoga. With their help, we can really start to unfold that hidden secret knowledge of the Veda. So I will combine the both, and today I want to present this first beginning, entering into the very psychology of the Veda, what it is all about. And I will use the story of the Mother, the Sri Aurobindo's quotations, and so on and so forth. Most probably some of you already went through these presentations with me from before. I do not know, Jaya Shri, most probably you had this double creation, yes, or triple creation, triple transformation of the integral yoga and triple creation of the Veda. We will look into these and we will see that they somehow correspond in the basics. Yeah? All right. Shall we start from the very beginning? In case you want to correct something or to ask or to say, so please, you just switch on microphone and do it. Don't kind of expect me to invite you. Yeah. So our way of discussion will be always, but you can say, but you see here I have a problem. So I will be very happy to explain or to engage at least. Explain is a wrong word. Let me project. All right. So this is my first presentation, which we will be doing twice because it's longish, and it is important to go slow in the light of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So I will start with this simple statement from The Secret of the Veda. Veda is the earliest gospel we have of man's immortality, and we know that the Vedic text is very ancient, kind of old. It belongs to at least 6000 BC, if not more. Yes, Taittiriya Samhita is 6000 BC, so Rig Veda is much older. It is the earliest gospel we have of man's immortality. This word immortality will come always in the form which we do not usually use this word. It's not the immortality of the soul. It's not about that immortality. It's the immortality of the being, of the embodied being. I would not say the body. The central conception of the Veda is the conquest of the truth out of the darkness of ignorance, and by the conquest of the truth, the conquest also of immortality. So within the darkness, the truth is hidden. This is the secret of the Veda. Within the inconscient being, within this being, which is inconscient, I'm not aware even of my body, how it functions. I am not aware of anything on the physical level. Yeah? I'm approaching it from the mental point of view as a concept, as a conceptual. Yeah? But from within the being, I am not aware. I'm not a living conscious being within the body. So that consciousness has to be, of the truth, is to be conquered out of this darkness, has to be revealed. And with that conquest, the conquest of immortality comes. And Sri Aurobindo says that the truth is the corridor to the delight of, or to the immortality. Immortality, interestingly, amritam, is connected with the delight of existence. It is that ambrosia which we, it's that sap, soma, yeah, ambrosia which we drink and enjoy. This is the immortality. So immortality is not only of the soul, but of our existence here. The Veda is perfect and beautiful in its coherence and its unity. This is also an important statement because there are too many scholars who say that Veda is incoherent because they can't understand what it is about. But for Sri Aurobindo, it is perfect, not just coherent, and beautiful in its coherence. Not just, it's beautiful in its coherence and its unity. It's an expression of the most fundamental knowledge of unity of spirit and nature. So the Vedic vision, let us start from the beginning. I will take few myths. First myth is from Shatapatha Brahmana. It's easier to start with Brahmanic myths rather than from the Rig Veda. We will come to the Rig Veda again, but we will deviate a little bit for the sake of convenience here. So there is a beautiful myth in Shatapatha Brahmana. At the beginning was the self, Atman. He was alone. There was only one self. There was nobody else. Yeah. And he looked around. This is funny. He was looking around and didn't find anybody except himself. So he was everywhere. Only him. Here I am, here I am, here I am. I am everywhere, only me. Yeah? And he said, I am, but there was no other name to say. For he was alone. Yeah? So there was no name yet to say that I am something or someone or my name is. There's no way to say because there is no need to say my name is because I alone am. Yeah? And then a shortcut in this myth, he was not happy. There are certain things there which are very interesting about the fear, and he became afraid. When he looked around and didn't find anybody except himself, he became afraid. Fear came to him. And then Shatapatha Brahmana says, it's true, the one who is alone is always afraid. But then he thought, whom I am afraid of, if I alone am? And fear vanished. And then Shatapatha Brahmana says, it's true, fear always comes from another. I think this is the fundamental definition of fear for any psychologist. Fear comes always from otherness of self. So whenever we anticipate some otherness of self, it creates the shrinking. What is fear? Fear in Sanskrit terms, bhi, is shrinking back to oneself, falling back. So you cannot be natural in that environment, so you recognize some otherness and you fall back to yourself. Yeah? You shrink. And the shrinking, this tension which it creates, is what is fear about. But then, when he realized there was nobody, and he became again not afraid, he was not happy. Then only he was not happy. He was looking for another, and he didn't find another. He was shrinking already, though there was no another, and that tension, that shrinking, created in him some kind of desire, as it were, to have another, to have relations. Yeah?
But how can the divine have fear?
Yeah, well, we have to deconstruct fear. Yeah? Fear is the word we use in our setting. It means something. It is not the same fear. And so that's why I've spent some time trying to explain what it means in terms of fundamental. What is fear really? How would you describe fear? What is happening when you are afraid?
You're alone,
Alone, what does it mean, alone? Again.
unknown, something unknown.
Unknown, yes, unknown. Sorry, I didn't hear. Unknown. Yes, unknown in what terms? Unknown is not always dangerous, yes?
Yeah, but there is a sense of threat, something you feel insecure. I mean,
Yes.
you feel like just the emptiness around becomes like a threat.
You recognize different self.
I don't know. I experienced this in one of my experiences where I became very fearful, even though I knew I was alone. I was totally alone, but I felt a great fear, like there was in that emptiness around me. there was a kind of a presence which was not not congenial, and I felt afraid, and I called out to the mother. So I
Right.
was alone. There was nobody else, but I felt afraid.
Yeah, that's why alone is afraid, as Shatavatha Brahmana says. But you know that there is someone. That's why alone is afraid, because there is someone else which makes you feel
You feel
afraid.
a presence, but you can't see that someone. That is
Right,
why.
that's the unknown, that
Yes.
someone else who is not you.
Yes.
I remember when I had also similar experience when I went down with a
Yes,
kind
I
of
also
light.
went down. I also
Yeah,
went.
like in the well, went to the bottom of the well,
Yeah.
and at the bottom of the well there was someone. I remember that, and he was breathing but his breath was not mine, and still it was me as it were, but not me, and this creates a terrible fear. Me which is not me. Actually, everything, all the world is me. It's myself. But when I recognize that it is not me, it creates shrinking. It is a wrong movement because everything and everyone is me in a way.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think that seemed to catch it for me that the root of all fear is a sense of separation, and it's something threat. In fact, every moment there's this very subtle fear because at some level we know this little separate me is doomed to die. There's always this effort. I think of it more again psychologically that we often project fear into external physical things, but the real fear is there's all these things inside of us which we take to be not me. And if they come up and we want to keep them away because I want to keep my sense of Don, like if I think I'm an honest person, it's a very threatening to see the part of me that wants to lie. And so I mean I'm afraid of anything that threatens my sense of my separate existence. And everything does. So there's this constant underlying fear.
Very interesting. The separate existence of myself, when I recognize otherness of self, the separation of me already tells me immediately that I'm fake.
Right.
And that creates that strange sense of being lost, of being, disappearing, falling into oblivion. Something that is the threat. Because I have to be everywhere. Yes, it's me everywhere. As this beginning of the one, he looked around and he found only himself everywhere. So he is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. He is everything. He can be anything because he alone is. He has all the power. And then suddenly, the idea that he has to find somebody else creates in him this tension, this shrinking fear that he might be not alone, and then he wants that otherness. He wants Sadvitiya Maishat. He wanted the second one. He was not Sanaivareme. He was not happy. He did not rejoice of being alone. He wanted to have another. Mother describes this beautifully in another way, that he had the sense of his identity, self-identity, the ananda of self-identity he had. Yeah. Alone he was okay, but he wanted to have that ananda of unity, and that's why he wanted another. Unity. That's why separateness was needed.
So, do you think it's because of that we have that primal fear in us?
Yeah,
That because it was
absolutely.
at the core in the beginning with him.
Yeah, it is the core fear that I am not myself. This
Mm.
is the only fear what we may have. And this is fundamental. And this is really the greatest enemy of
Yeah.
ourselves. In
Yes.
our ego, as Mother says, the greatest
Yeah.
enemy is fear. Yeah, this is one thing we have to banish, is fear, because I am this everything. I am everywhere. Only I just didn't realize it yet. And that creates the movement of towards unity. So he wanted another. How he who alone was could create another. What would you do? Let us speak psychologically. I am here, there, everywhere. There is nobody else. So what should I do? You see this picture, the sun in the dark. What would you do to become another? How can you become another?
Imagine.
Yeah, if you imagine, but imagining is okay, as he imagined that, yeah, and he didn't find anybody. Imagination didn't work. Yeah.
It's like an immaculate birth, letting part of yourself give birth
Yeah.
to something
Manifest.
apparently
Something like
other.
birth, yeah.
Yeah. Project from yourself.
Project where? If you are everywhere, so what would you do? Where would you project yourself there where you are not? You are everywhere.
Inside you,
Inside is you, outside is you,
in your mind.
in your mind is you, even in your mind, if there is a mind, there is no yet mind even.
You have to create some space so that there's
Absolutely. You have to create something where you are not.
Yes.
You know, this may seem very mundane and silly, but you bring to mind this, you know, one of our favorite comic strips, Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin's a 6-year-old boy, and Hobbes is a tiger. And for Calvin, the little boy, the tiger is real. And they run around, they play baseball, and they do all kinds of things. And everyone else sees Hobbes as a little stuffed tiger. So Calvin's like halfway there. He's imagined this real world that he lives in. So it's kind of like it's like when the self is there alone, that imagining that you mentioned before is like part of the way. But as Jan said, you need to have that quote unquote real, apparently real space for the manifestation to occur.
Well, that in that boy's mind, he is already in the embodied world which evolved. He has the figures of otherness embodied with which he can interact in a delightful way. This self does not have anyone, even the name yet, yeah, of which is different from which he could call himself something, yeah. He cannot, because there is no difference within anything. So how to create the first fundamental difference? This is the most important knowledge of the Veda, by the way. And that is he had to create, I have several quotations here, which I will come back to them later, just to support the same thought. So I will follow with Sri Aurobindo. Why should Brahman, asks Sri Aurobindo, who is perfect, absolute, infinite, needing nothing, desiring nothing, at all throw out force of consciousness to create in itself these worlds of forms? If then, being free to move or remain eternally still, to throw itself into forms or retain the potentiality of form in itself, it indulges its power of movement and formation, it can be only for one reason: for delight, more delight. So this idea of having Dvitiya Maicha, that he wanted another, he wanted to be another, he wanted otherness of self. There are beautiful passages in Savitri where this soul leaped out into this darkness we will speak about. But this is even before the darkness is not yet created. There is only light, there is no night. Yeah. So So this is the fundamental importance of the night, yeah, which has to be created where he will not be aware of himself. But the fundamental movement was the additional delight. The delight of unity, as Mother says, the ananda of unity, which is, as she says, additional ananda, or to his ananda of identity. He wanted to have more ananda. You see, ananda through unity, not ananda through identity. I think it's very psychological, because otherwise how this world can come into being at all? Why to have all this trouble of creating of forms and creating their interaction if that would not be for this one reason, for delight, for more delight?
So, Vladimir, would you say it seems like this is, you said it's psychological, it's so applicable to every moment of our lives, because right now I can inquire, am I taking this class to learn something, to solve a problem, or is it for delight, and not delight for done, because that would be pleasure? This is for delight of the divine. This is repeated in every moment of our lives.
Yeah.
This potential. No?
Absolutely. It's all what we are doing. We are coming to the classes, we are going and working and this and that, and cooking and eating and drinking. We are all doing this for delight, for more delight and more delight. Delight, which is the divine in us, which is seeking this delight. Yeah. We are not aware of that divine. We think that it's me who is seeking the delight. But through me having delight, the divine has the delight. Yeah? Because there is nobody else here, only him. So here we have this idea of Sri Aurobindo, that this is for delight alone that this creation came into being. As in Taittiriya it would be said, yes, Anandadhyeva khalvimani bhutani jayante. It is from the Ananda that all these beings are being born. Anandena jatani jivanti. By Ananda they live. Anandam prayanti abhisambhishanti. And to Ananda they go after death. Ananda is the source, the reason and the aim, both the reason and the aim of this creation. Yeah. More and more Ananda. And we will see how he achieves it. He wanted to become second, the many. Bahusyam, may I become many. How could he who alone was become many? And that is, we will see how he becomes many. This is the most interesting way of proceeding, how Sri Aurobindo and the mother explain it. So in the mother's explanation, I take another quotation here. The Supreme says the mother decided exteriorize himself, objectivize himself in order to have the joy, the joy of knowing himself in detail. Bahusyam, may I be many, may all my details will be spelled out in manifestation as separate, joyful entities which I can deal with separately. Not in my total identity, but in unity, in separate time and space events. I can have this detail, not everything at once, but step by step, unfolding myself, discovering myself, knowing myself in detail, to be able to see himself. He wanted to see himself. Till that moment, he couldn't see himself. He was alone. He saw himself everywhere as he subjectively. Can you imagine? Subject finds himself subjectively everywhere. Cannot see himself objectively. This is the quality of the faculty of seeing, objective viewing oneself as such. which was not given to him at the beginning. He didn't have that capacity. Objectively view himself. For that, he needs to be many.
So he needs to be many, and like you said, he wants to see it separately in sequence. So does that imply the creation of time apart from space?
Absolutely. Time, space, we are on the way to that. So the first thing in himself which he exteriorized, says the mother, was the knowledge of the world and the power to create it. Sat, what we call the Chit Shakti or Chit Tapas. So Sat, the being, manifested within himself this knowledge and power. Chit Shakti, Chit Tapas, the Divine Mother was within him. The awareness which has power, the awareness which uses his being and makes it into whatever it views him. So the consciousness may view being in different ways, and these views have power. They shape the being into a particular form. This consciousness force, knowledge consciousness and force, began its work, and the supreme will, in the supreme will there was a plan, and the first principle of this plan was the expression of both the essential joy and the essential freedom, which seemed to be the most interesting feature of this creation. This is the mother's words. Essential joy and essential freedom. And notice that these are two fundamental qualities of our life. Rights, fundamental rights of our living. Freedom and joy. What we are fighting for always for two things, freedom and joy. We don't fight for anything else. Why freedom? What is freedom actually? Joy we understand, kind of understand. Even that is not very understandable. But freedom, what is this freedom?
No restriction.
Expansion, vastness.
Yes, you are everywhere yourself. No more shrinking.
No more boundaries.
No more boundaries. You identify yourself with everyone as yourself. You find all self in yourself and yourself in all selves. This is freedom. Freedom is the divine. The divine is free. That's why if freedom is given to every individual, because we are in the form and name of the divine. Yes. All right. So how could he achieve this separateness of his being? The first creation, the eternal night. We already arrived at this. He had to separate himself from himself. Night, says the Veda, was born out of the shining truth of the supreme power. From the night, the waters of the inconscient came into being, and from the waters of the inconscient, the time was born, the creator of all that moves. So it is out of light the night came into being. Yeah? Not out of light, not out of the night light. Not the God didn't say, let it be light, because he was darkness then. It's not that way. The God was light, and he said, let it be night. And the night appeared. So I kind of rephrase the Bible here. So in the Veda, it's just the opposite. He was light, and he said, let it be night. And so the night was born, the night where he is not aware. How he could come to that night? Let us look into that. In the Aitareya, it is said, out of himself he cast a luminous shadow. Interesting, shadow and luminous. First it is luminous and then it is becoming more and more shadow. All these worlds, from the superconscient to the inconscient, gradually denying himself, withdrawing his supreme knowledge from his supreme power, becoming unaware of these worlds as himself. The darkness is the absence of the awareness. So if light is the full awareness, then darkness is that light where the awareness is reduced to zero. So if he is not aware of himself in that power of himself, then he is not himself there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
But I keep noticing in the back of the mind that hearing this stuff, hearing these lines as if they're talking only about linear time. If this is quote unquote before time, it's not linear time. It's describing a process that exists eternally, timelessly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a hierarchy of the events. It's the psychological necessity which is timeless,
Okay.
And spaceless. So because if we really think how the one who alone is could become many, how would you do it? Really? Give me any other scenario.
Yeah.
And you will find that you will not find any other but this. Amazing. I tried everything. I really tried. I'm kind of imagination is not the solution. You have to be. So the interesting description of this is what Mother speaks about 4 emanations. We will come in a minute. I want to also one more from Savitri. In the enigma of the darkened vasts, in the passion of self-loss of the infinite, self-loss, this is the key word. A contradiction founds the base of life. The eternal, the divine reality has faced itself with its own contraries. Being became the void, and conscious force nescience, and walk of a blind energy. And ecstasy took the figure of world pain. Here all these 4 emanations are already mentioned, these 4 emanations which Mother speaks of as a creation of the world: consciousness in light, bliss, truth, and life. If I rephrase them, consciousness in light will be Chit, bliss will be, or Chit Tapas, let us say, bliss will be the Ananda, truth, Samjnana, what I'm saying, Vijnana, and life will be Sat. It is the being which is living, the eternal life. So these 4 emanations, one by one, and the order is important, very important. First, the consciousness in light started to fall. They were given, as Mother says, the freedom to create. And every one of these 4 emanations of Sat, Chit, Ananda, and Vijnana considered themselves to be the Supreme. No, Supreme is behind them. Supreme is all 4 of them. But they thought or felt, or I do not know how to say otherwise, not to use the word of perception, they knew themselves as the Supreme. So the consciousness in light started to create and deviated from bliss and truth and life as if it was her creation. And slowly it degraded into the total darkness. This is the darkness at the bottom. And by that degradation, it pulled the bliss into the suffering. So So first, the awareness has to fall into the darkness. The night is to be created, which pulls the eternal bliss of self-identity into the suffering, because the space is narrowed of self-awareness to the total absence. And in that space of being unaware, his bliss is suffering. And his truth is falsehood. And these three, consciousness, bliss, and truth, pulled finally the Sat, the being, into the death. He could first time die. So he lost his immortality by their own fall, by these three emanations which are inbuilt in Sat. They pulled Sat down into death. This is the major topic of the whole Savitri. The whole Savitri story is about these four emanations, as you know. Yes. Consciousness in light is Dyumatsena figure, bliss is Ashvapati, truth is Savitri, and life is Satyavan. And they have to be recovered, all of them. And four boons which she receives, the first boon is the sight of Dyumatsena in his kingdom. This is the recovery of consciousness in light. Second was 100 sons for Ashvapati. Ashvapati, who Santapam Upajagmivana, who had all the kind of in his kingdom, but he suffered a lot. He had no bliss because he had no progeny. So he was given progeny, 100 sons, and bliss returned to him. This is the recovery of Ashvapati. Truth is, interestingly, Savitri. She was the word, the incarnate word of the truth, of the supramental world, the daughter of the sun who came here. And interestingly, in Mahabharata, about Savitri, it is said that many people, she was looking for her mate, and nobody approached her, though she was Devakanyaiva. She was as if the divine maiden. She was so beautiful, and nobody dared to approach her for marriage. Why? Because she was truthful. This is the line in Savitri, in the Mahabharata Savitri, story of Markandeya. Not because she was not beautiful, she was like a divine beauty, but she was also truthful, which seems that kind of man doesn't want to have a truthful wife. He wants to have a beautiful wife, but who is always lying to him about his. So I'm joking here, a stupid joke, but still, something interesting, that truthfulness was not the value they wanted to have. So she is that truth, the Divine Mother who came here to save. And life is Satyavan, yes? The Satyavan, the one who possesses that truth, the possessor of the truth, who is destined to die within 1 year. So she, by marrying him, she recovered all four. And all these fallen emanations were redeemed. So the consciousness in light was darkness, was blind Dyumatsena was returned to his kingdom, became again seeing. The Ashvapati received his bliss. She received her truth, interestingly, her truth, which was that she married. She was married to the soul of humanity, and the soul of humanity became immortal. I do not know why I deviated to this, but I just wanted us to see these four major personalities about which Sri Aurobindo speaks in his note to Savitri. You can read it there.
Thank you. That was very enlightening, actually.
Yes, it was.
Very.
This is the whole story of Savitri, all these four emanations. It's about them. original emanations. Yeah.
And Vladimir, I'd just like to make a small comment here. Is that what you said about the process of the way the four emanations came out of the Supreme, and then each one became separate and began to think that they were the Supreme, got separated, and therefore they fell. The same thing happens in the process of sleep. You know, there is this narrowness of the consciousness as we go into the night, into sleep. And slowly we begin to lose the awareness first,
Very
the
interesting.
sight, the senses, and then it seems even life, because bodily there is no movement really. And so it is all, it's the whole thing is like the same process, but in a miniature form each night with every individual.
Yeah,
And then
they
in the
separate
morning we
us.
recover everything again.
If we can, yes.
Yeah,
Like
like
recover. Mhm.
like Sri Aurobindo explains in his letters that in the process of sleep, we journey from the waking consciousness and we go deeper and deeper and deeper into the night. And then we touch the psychic and begin the return journey to the waking consciousness. One by one, we recover all the stages.
You know, it's interesting hearing this, Jayashri, in light of what Vladimir's been saying about the Vedas.
Yes.
If, as you lie down and go to sleep, you'll notice that the definitions, if you stay aware, the definitions of your body, the arms, the legs, the bed, begin to dissolve. But if you stay aware, you can notice your mind going into the inner realms.
Yes.
In the dreams, that if you stay aware in the dreams, that you can dissolve, allow the dream to dissolve and stay conscious in sleep. And that's so you're actually conscious in that realm in sleep. And it's almost like you're traversing this path that Vladimir just led us on from, you know, you're alone as oneness in sleep, but no longer unconscious. Like where the Ishopanishad says, where there is no other, how can there be fear? I just wanted to say one more comment about what I'm sort of getting from this in general. You know, I've noticed over the years that reading any scripture, East or West, anything post-Vedic, you know, there's delight, there's beauty, there's wisdom, there's even power, but there's something substantial missing. And Vladimir gave a phrase earlier, said the rishis were almost more interested in diversity than unity. It struck me what feels unique about the Vedas to me is that the Tantras have this somewhat, but there's this richness of celebration of divine as diversity that I find almost in no other text except Mother and Sri Aurobindo. So I really appreciate sort of seeing this, you know, what is it? And you know, I just glanced at Savitri while you're talking, the lines, and feeling it with the same richness that's there in the Vedas, that every word, I'm reading the growth of the flame, just like ordinary thing, you know, the trees, whatever, but feeling that all as the play of utter delight and diversity completely transforms your reading of Savitri. So it's all I find this all very amazing.
Yeah. By the way, with this, you will see later that this, what we are doing now, we will see the very big impact on reading Savitri. Savitri will bring totally new Vedic meaning. It will be on every page, in every word. The presumption will be of this redemption, yes, of this bringing back these fallen emanations, constant transformation of these fallen beings. This is the sacrifice, yes. Yes, Gita Shri, you wanted to say something.
So this is like, to me, it looks like a big wheel of life and death going round and round. Life and death. You know, how we are born with purity and everything that we can emanate, and then how we go through life, and then we die, and then we are born again. This wheel goes round and round.
Yeah, we have to come to one more point. So look at this. These four emanations of the Supreme who alone is, emanated out of himself these kind of, as Mother says, knowledge force, knowledge power. This is knowledge power, basically, yes, in its aspects of knowledge, bliss, truth, which pulls down the being into the non-existent state, death. Death is nothing but life, yes, eternal life, perpetual life in time and space of the one who cannot die. He has to disappear in his form and reappear in a new form and disappear in his form. The form is constantly changing. There is this law of preservation of energy, which is the most interesting confirmation of this, that life is going on. Yeah, it changes form. The energy cannot be expanded, cannot be vanished. It changes its form, it changes its vehicle, yeah? But it is always there. So the fire burns and the temperature goes and heats the air, and the air moves, and everything moves and gives this energy back to somebody else to continue the movement of that energy. The law of preservation of energy is the most mysterious in physics, by the way. It should be exhausted, but it is not. How come? It's never exhausted. Energy is never exhausted. So here we are. We have only the first creation. The first four emanations were fallen, and as Mother says in her story, the Divine Mother saw this fall of the first emanations into their opposites, and they are not anymore. So there is no more light, there is no more bliss, there is no more truth, there is no more life. And she said, turned to the Supreme and said, "Look what happened. What shall we do now?" And he told her, "You find in me the force greater than these, and precipitate with these fallen emanations."
Can you repeat that, please, Vladimir? I missed it. You find in me?
In me the force greater consciousness in light, greater bliss, greater truth, and even greater life, with which you can precipitate, with which you can send, which can plunge into the darkness of the fallen emanations to bring them back to their self-awareness, to redeem them. So there was, Mother looked for this force, and she found the force of the gods, according to her story. There are two stories she spoke, or three even, major two. In one of the stories, she doesn't mention the gods. In the other, she speaks about them. And she found the gods, those gods who are in the Veda, about whom we will be talking. And these gods, she told them, look, we have to plunge into the darkness and bring out of this inconscient suffering and falsehood and death them back to their self-awareness. But the gods, when they looked into that abyss, they said, no, it's not for us. They were scared. So the gods did not want to plunge into the darkness. They stayed in their own kind of domain. And then she found another force, which was the force of that psychic being, or that force of the Agni, which descended, the immortal among mortals, who had courage to plunge into the darkness of the inconscient. And from there we have a second stage. When the first involution took place, says the Veda, and the light was turned into the darkness, the creation became as if unsteady. It could not sustain itself because it wasn't. Can you imagine something which is not? So the Supreme Self had to enter and to support it from within, as it were. So when he entered, as the Veda says, himself by himself, Atmanatmanam Abhisam Vivesha, the creation became steady. So he entered those fallen emanations with another force of himself. So he cast out of himself, as it were, out of himself, because he was not aware of himself there. That means out. Yeah? It is in himself, but it is out of himself in awareness. Yeah? He is not there. He is not aware of himself in that state. In that state, he entered with another force, penetrated it. And then that which wasn't became as if steady. The night became steady. And there is a beautiful passage from Savitri confirming this. When all was plunged in the negating void, non-being's night could never have been saved if being had not plunged into the dark. These are the fundamentals we have. If we understand these, at least psychologically, at least philosophically, better both, better psychologically and philosophically, then there will be a beautiful book of Savitri, Veda, everything. We will see it in every line, presumed. These fundamentals. So to save the night, to save this darkness and the light within it, the divine had to enter it and to stabilize it. And from now on, the inconscient could do its work, as Sri Aurobindo says. I don't have this quotation. The inconscient does its work. Here it is. He sleeps in the atom and the burning star. He sleeps in man and God and beast and stone. Because he is there, the inconscient does its work. Because he is there, the world forgets to die. Can you imagine how beautifully you found the expression? The world which is not, it forgets even to die. It continues its life because he is there. How he twisted it double, he kind of triple reflected upon it with its own non-awareness. It forgot to die. It forgets everything there and it forgets to die. Yes, we have to stop here. I think we are over time. So this we will continue next time, and we will see what his second creation brings to us, how he entered and what happened to this creation. And from that time on, the evolution starts to take place. So these fallen emanations start to evolve with him within.
I wish we could go on and on and on and never
Yes.
Yeah.
All day long.
That was so wonderful.
It was just wonderful. So wonderful.
Forever. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
This is a beautiful knowledge, yes,
Yeah.
given to us by, and if that would not be given to us by Sri Aurobindo and the mother, we would have no clue what these Vedas are talking about. And from now on, you will see that it will all make sense. Yeah, and I remember in the Gnostic Center, after these course on the Vedas, they said, finally we can read Savitri with understanding.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you
Savitri.
so much, Vladimir. It's wonderful.
Yeah, really.
Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Harihi Om. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.